We should actually debate to each other.
I was going to say, which...
We don't look at the camera.
Yeah, we don't look at the camera.
No, live. We're live.
We are live?
Yeah.
Yes, you've seen it. I'm looking for the... live, terrific. Welcome, councillors, CEO, executive, and good evening to those watching live on our YouTube channel. To start the official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country. The members of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians of this land for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. As you will see, we have all 7 councillors in the chamber tonight, appropriately socially distanced of course, and our CEO and directors are supporting us via video link to minimise the number of people in the council chamber. Likewise, in accordance with COVID-19 restrictions on people within buildings, the public, unfortunately, cannot be accommodated in the chamber at the moment. I therefore ask the mover and the seconder of the recommendation to close the meeting. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Machin, could you read it out, please?
Thank you, Mayor. That Council 1 closes the ordinary meeting of Council 16 June 2020 under the Local Government Act 2020, Part 12, Section 395, and 2, notes that where there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6:30 p.m. 23 June 2020.
Thank you.
Have a second, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Charisma. Is there any opposition to that motion? I declare the matter carried. Thank you. So we have all present, all 7 councillors. Apologies, no. Declarations of interest for items on tonight's agenda. Councillor Machin.
Thank you, Mayor. Would like to declare conflict of interest because of close association with 10.1.6, the planning permit application at Albert Street, Chewton.
Thank you. That's noted, and we will expect you to raise that again when that item comes up and remove yourself from the chamber for that particular item to be debated. Thank you. So now I move on to, I take that there's no other conflicts of interest. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of council from the 19th of May.
Yes, Mayor, I move a motion that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held on the 19th of May 2020 be confirmed.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion. Thank you. Councillor Charisma. Opposition, I take it no, so declare that carried. And now we come to public question time. And I remind members of the public who may be watching tonight and our councillors that due to the fact that we cannot invite the public in to join us tonight, the alternative arrangement was offered where people can email or call in by phone and register a question. We have 6 questions tonight, and I've asked my fellow councillors to help me in the reading out of these questions to save my voice a bit and also to vary the voice that's being heard. So the first one is from Bev Phillips of Malden Urban Land Care, and Councillor Garden has kindly agreed to read out her question.
Thank you, Bev. To the MAC Council, I'm Bev Phillips, the Secretary of Malden Urban Land Care Inc. or MULGA. At the council meeting of 17th March this year, during public question time, I informed the council about unacceptable work that had been carried out on 2 of the pre-1852 eucalypts at the Billwood Reserve in Malden. The full text of my statement and the photos I provided to the councillors are attached for reference. I also informed the council that we had not received a reply to an email sent to the relevant council officer in January of this year, asking if the current roadside tree maintenance program applies only to the urban roads of Malden and not to the roads on the periphery of the town. Our request at the council meeting was that a significant tree register be established as a matter of some urgency, as the current level of protection for the pre-1852 eucalypts is clearly not adequate. The then acting director of infrastructure and development was leaving 1 week after the March council meeting. However, the CEO said the council officers would get back to us in response to our requests. We have not heard from the council since then. We acknowledge that COVID-19 will have caused some disruption to the work of council officers. However, it is important to us that our concerns are not overlooked. We wish to request, 1, the establishment of a significant tree register from Mount Alexander Shire Council, a meeting with the recently appointed Director of Infrastructure and Development and the Tree Management Officer to inform them in detail about the survey work Mulga has conducted for pre-1852 eucalypts in Malden and our significant concern about the inadequate long-term protection for them, particularly when work is undertaken by council in the proximity of their trees. More details about the roadside tree maintenance program in Malden, as there are pre-1852 eucalypts on both urban and more peripheral roadsides in Malden. Thank you, Beth Phillips, Secretary Mulga.
Thanks, Councillor Garden. I have some answers here, which I will read back on behalf of our Director of Infrastructure and Development. The first question was the establishment of a significant tree register of the council. The response is that the significant tree study was completed in 2003 and has been the responsibility of the Parks and Gardens since late 2018. All registered trees located on urban council managed land were inspected in 2019, details updated and recorded in ASITA. That's our council register, asset management system. All pre-1852 modern trees located on urban council managed land have also been inspected and recorded in ASITA. Registered trees and modern pre-1852 trees on rural council managed lands have not been inspected or mapped due to the number of trees and the time required to inspect. Registered trees on private property have not been inspected or mapped. Ongoing management of significant trees will form part of the responsibilities of Parks and Gardens arborist. I believe that's a recent appointment. The significant tree register for the Mount Alexander Shire planning scheme has not yet been developed. So that's a response to part A. The second request was for a meeting with the Director of Infrastructure and Development and the Tree Management Officer. And the response is more than happy to meet, and this will be arranged. So please sort of expect a contact from our director regarding making that appointment to meet. And part C, more detail about roadside tree maintenance program in Malden. Responses, while trees outside of the urban boundary are currently not included in the schedule and proactive tree maintenance program, it is intended that these trees are included in a new program to be developed this year by Council's Tree Management Officer. Thank you. So that's the first one. And the second, now we have 4 questions regarding property in Farnsworth Street. And I'll ask the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lesser, to read those out and the short responses to them.
Thank you, Mayor. The first letter we have is from Mr. Christopher Hosking, and the question is for the Director of Infrastructure and Development, Jess Howard. The question starts here. The planning scheme requires a permit be sought for land and buildings protected by a heritage overlay, and the planning scheme says a permit is required to carry out works, repairs and routine maintenance which change the appearance of a heritage place or which are not undertaken to the same details, specification and materials. So why have works been carried out on a part of Farnsworth Street covered by a heritage overlay with no accompanying permit? And clearly there has been changes to the heritage place. This sort of oversight provides a precedent that makes a mockery of the entire basis of the intent of heritage overlays. Also, what measures are in train to remedy this situation? Chris Hosking, Castlemaine. The answer that we have been provided with is in part The part of the question that seeks clarification about the heritage overlay and permit requirements for works in the road reserve is taken on notice. Council is investigating the matter. A response can be provided directly to Mr. Hosking with a copy to all councillors. The part of the question that relates to whether or not this issue will become a compliance matter is noted. Council routinely investigates planning matters raised by community members. Various compliance options are available to council should any breach of a planning scheme be confirmed. All compliance matters are investigated and treated confidentially. End of reply. The second question that we have is from a Margaret Panter in Butterworth Street. And it is as follows. I have a question relating to the recent earthworks, in brackets, about 10 metres wide and well over a metre high on one side, close brackets, on the verge outside 37 Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine, which have buried indigenous understory vegetation and compacted the soil around a long leaf box tree. I understand council engineers have given a minor works permit for these earthworks. What is council's definition of minor? Signed, Margaret Panter, 7 to 9 Butterworth Street, Castlemaine. The answer that's provided to Margaret Panter is as follows. Understands that council's infrastructure unit have issued a minor works permit for earthworks out 37 Farnsworth Street. Please, as I said, please provide council definition of minor. So that was the gist of it. Okay, so our answer to that is council will provide a written response to Ms. Panter clarifying the definition of minor works. The next letter is from Frank Panter and is as follows. With reference to the minor works permit issued for the driveway and turning circle on the verge outside 37 Farnsworth Street, can concerned residents view that permit so they can find out what is going on and as an aid to finding a solution to the problem? As this works permit was issued for carrying out works in Heritage Overlay HO668, will council apply for a planning permit as is required under the Mount Alexander Planning Scheme? If not, why not? Frank Panter, 9 Butterworth Street, Castlemaine. And the answer for Frank Panter is as follows. This question is taken on notice. A response will be provided directly to Mr. Panter with a copy provided to all councillors. Works permit was issued for the carrying out of work in Heritage Overlay HO668. Will council apply for a planning permit as required? If not, why not? And the answer to that is the question relates to the same matter raised by Mr. Hosking. It is taken on notice and a response can be provided directly to Mr. Panter with a copy provided to all councillors. The next letter is again from the same matter. It's from Felicity Brown, Town Planner and Urban Design. And it's a question to council regarding current works in Road Reserve, Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine. And is as follows. I'm acting on behalf of local residents who have requested my review of the current earthworks within the Road Reserve at the frontage of 37 Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine. I'm advised that these works were approved as minor works in a Road Reserve permit issued by Mount Alexander Shire. The current earthworks observed at this site involve the addition of fill within the Road Reserve to create a large levelled area at the frontage of 37 Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine. There was also evidence of tree lopping. Question to council, why was a planning permit not required? The area of Farnsworth Street Road Reserve that is currently undergoing earthworks is located within local heritage overlay HO668 camp reserve environs. Works on the land within the heritage overlay requires a planning permit, including minor works, such as construction of a vehicle crossover. Under the heritage overlay provisions of clause 43.1 01-1 of the Mount Alexander Planning Scheme, a planning permit is required to carry out works which change the appearance of a heritage place or which are not undertaken to the same detailed specification and materials. Work is not explicitly defined in the planning scheme, but is defined in the Planning Environment Act, Section 1987, Section 3 definition. Works include any change in the natural or existing condition or topography of the land, including the removal, destruction, or lopping of trees, and the removal of vegetation or topsoil. Secondly, there appears to have been lopping of vegetation in order to undertake these works, and this also requires a planning permit as tree controls apply in HO 668. Remove, destroy, or lop a tree if the schedule to this overlay specifies the heritage place as one where tree controls apply, brackets clause 43.01-1, those brackets. There are also questions as to whether the extent of the works granted under a minor works permit fall under the definition of minor work and the purpose of the works. However, the first question for council is to respond to why a planning permit has not been required. Yours sincerely, Felicity Brown. And the answer from our directors is this question is taken on notice and a response will be provided to Ms Brown with a copy provided to all councillors. Thank you, Mayor. Those are the speakers.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And now, the last one is from Martin Robbins, and I think Councillor Machin, you're reading it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Robbins has 3 questions, so I'll put the questions and then the answers following those. So, firstly, I commend Mount Alexander Shire Council and Mount Alexander Sustainability Group for successfully initiating this program and issuing its associated household survey, but feel that the goal of attaining 700 responses to the survey may be an insufficient sample, around 5% of electors, to achieve an adequate sample on which to base key decisions. The community submission to Council for Climate Emergency Declaration indicated a very high level of community support for effective climate action. Can this survey be extended to proactively embrace the entire community with baseline information to support the proposed RSA collaborative platform? So the response to that is that the sample intends to be representative by type of household, which is embedded in the survey, house typology, age, size, works done, etc. This is not the completed picture, and this more granular data will be complemented with data from electricity providers and council rates data to complete the analysis. And also note that 700 responses is for 700 homes as a minimum, not people, so it should be regarded as compared to the population. Having said that, we want this survey to be seen by as many people as possible, and so invite it to be shared widely. We would be delighted if it could be shared with the climate emergency mail list, that big petition that we all got. The more responses, the better, and we would welcome the support to increase the number of surveys completed. Also, the RSA platform will have a very broad engagement strategy, and it is definitely the intention to build on the existing appetite for action in the community. We welcome all efforts at partnership in this regard. The second question is in regards to our budget. In view of the existential risk to our community from anthropogenic climate change, I am concerned whether the amount allocated to environment and sustainability, brackets, 220,000, from the overall budget of 43 million adequately addresses the urgent necessary actions. Will this pose a risk to the climate emergency commitments already made by the Shire to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Council is already, this is the answer, Council is already responding to the impacts of climate change both indirectly and directly. Plans and initiatives already underway and noted on page 13 of the June ordinary meeting of Council agenda. Careful consideration has been undertaken to ensure that the budget allocation for climate emergency commitments aligns with planned strategic objectives for 2021. The budget allocation also provides a holistic approach for service provision for a range of other council activities, such as capital works, community services. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Council is choosing to make allowance in the budget for reduced income or additional expenditure. We have budgeted conservatively, but expect the financial impact of the pandemic to be around $1 million. Residents, just making sure this is the right one, okay. Residents do have a further opportunity to provide their thoughts and feedback to the draft budget during the public exhibition period. If the draft budget is approved tonight, it will be made publicly available on our website for 28 days prior to adoption at the August ordinary meeting. We welcome your feedback and ideas, so please get in touch by 5 p.m. on Wednesday the 15th of July and look on our website under the Have Your Say part. It is challenging to balance the many competing interests for funding during budget deliberations. Our implementation plan for the roadmap to carbon neutrality will provide information to help inform budget development. This final question is in relation to our Climate Change Action Plan 2016-2020. When will the Climate Action Plan 63 item action list be updated to reflect current action status and goals? And the answer to that is our intent is to report on the Climate Action Plan in the next financial year, that's next month, with a view to drafting a new strategy to encompass the recent developments, i.e. climate emergency, community transition plan and our own roadmap. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nation. Very much appreciated. Thank you to all the three councillors who assisted me there, as well as the responses from our executive officers. So thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of public question time. Not quite the dynamic that we look forward to, shall I say, ordinary meetings. May we return as soon as possible when we can reduce our physical distancing requirements. So I'm now, I didn't have to call for a suspending standing orders because there's only councillors in the chamber, but I'm now going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is petitions. And there's a petition received from residents of Empire Street and Simpson Street. And I think there is a recommendation there. Councillor, do you want to move the motion?
Happy to move the recommendation there.
Thank you.
As printed.
Right, thank you, which we're receiving the programme and receiving the petition, and there will be a response item 10.3.1 of the agenda later on this evening. So thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Machen, thank you. Any opposition? No, thank you. No need procedure. We have no committee reports at this stage, so assemblies, record of assemblies of council, we had a few of those in the last week, sorting out the budget, etc.
Yes.
So
Yes, Mayor, I'm happy to move a motion that the council makes the records.
Maybe noted. Thank you,
The
Councillor
councils have acquired in the local government.
Lesser, and seconded by Councillor Newman. Thank you. And I assume there's no opposition. So now I move on to a very exciting item in the budget list, in the agenda, which is the approval of our proposed budget 2020-2021 for public exhibition. And we have a recommendation that we advertise the proposed budget, make it available for review on Council's website, hear anyone who wants to speak about it on July 28th, special meeting, consider any submissions and adopt the council budget on the council meeting on the 18th of August, and authorise the CEO to undertake minor editorial changes to the proposed budget if required. We find typo. So we've got a recommendation there.
Mayor, I will move, turn that recommendation into a motion.
Yes.
As printed, and you just read out. And so I move that the council adopt the proposed budget in those 5 items.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lesser. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Cordy. Is the motion opposed? No. That's a good start. Councillor Lesser, I'm sure you wish to speak to your motion. Would you like to take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This has been unusual because this is the third time that I've moved the budget. So that has been unusual. I'm not too sure why, but that's my luck. Okay. I'm addressing my comments obviously to my fellow councillors and to the community at large.
I suspect you need to speak up
A bit more. Okay, I want to talk about the budget from a human perspective rather than hard, cold facts and figures. We are all hurting individually and collectively as a community. Initially, we thought we were well on the way to finalising the budget. Then COVID-19 hit us. Do we need to change things? What do we do as a council? How do we respond? We were up against the timeline. Then the Minister for Local Government gave us extra time to tweak the budget to respond to COVID-19. Much discussion took place. Now, this is my personal observation as councillors. Each one of us, as per the rest of the community, has been affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, and our own personal experiences began to have an impact and influence our discussions and considerations. Uppermost in our minds was the impact our budget decisions would have on our community, both in the short term and the long term. There was empathy. This was not an easy process for us or the staff. Council staff were tasked to prioritise projects and review their budgets. Where could savings be made? What could be postponed? How could we help our community? Could we inject extra financial help? Wave income from fees and charges? All this and much more was presented to councillors for further deliberations. Staff worked really hard to attract significant additional capital works funds by getting projects shovel ready. And successful they were. But there's more. Staff were successful in gaining funding for an extra 21 paid staff formed by the state under the Work for Victoria scheme. This 6 months deployment will help the community in a variety of ways to get through the next 6 months of COVID-19 impacts. It all helps. I would like to focus on two aspects, if I may: the business community and the bottom line. Further on in this agenda, you will see our financial hardship policy. In other policies, we have adjusted our procurement procedures to support local businesses. Now, your council is a leader in supporting small business via Small Business Victoria seminars, and I attend every one of them. They are a great help, and I encourage all small businesses or business people to attend them, especially in this time of need. The latest seminars have dealt with the impact of COVID-19 on business and utilising online platforms. We have an active council team leading the way, and I again urge you, the business community, to take part. We are doing our bit to support you. The bottom line: COVID-19 has had an impact on our finances and the delivery of services. This was not on our horizon when we first finalised our budget. Hence, the bottom line became a bit wobbly. What do we do? What future impact do we leave to an incoming council? Do we cut back on services or operations? There is an expectation to expand our services for the community. Do we maintain our current financial position? By adopting this budget, there is an underlying deficit. But we have enough cash reserves to cover us in this time of uncertainty and turmoil. Our advice is that we are in a good financial position in the short term. Then, to rate rise or not to rate rise, that was the question on our minds. Then we received the projections. Which scenario to choose? Yes, we hurt the community. Yes, we are all hurting. As councillors, this is what we faced. Do we hand on to an incoming council an additional $1.6 million deficit that compounds as time goes on, resulting in a possible loss of services when the community keeps asking us for more. So from my perspective, the budget papers that we have before us and what we'd like the community to comment on is the best compromise in these trying times. So I support the budget document. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. The seconder, would you like to speak now?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just make a couple of comments. I think Max has covered a lot. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of council officers and also councillors. It's a big team effort to put together the budget. We've had the COVID-19 budget review, so that's delayed our budget going out for public comment by a little bit. But what it meant was the whole budget was reviewed extensively. So a big thank you to our finance staff in particular and managers that went through every line of the budget and revisited everything. So basically they've had to do the budget twice, which is unprecedented really, certainly in my time on council. The budget will now go out for public comment. It's a really good budget. It's a well-considered budget. And you've got to remember that budget is a guide or a plan, and you've got a plan for success. And Mount Alexander Shire has got a very sound financial footing and basis to this budget. And I believe it's a very good budget, and I'm happy to support it. And again, thank you to everyone that contributed. And certainly I look forward to hearing those submissions from the public when they read the detail of the budget, because it's very comprehensive and well considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Patricio.
Yeah, I'll speaking obviously for the budget. My initial thoughts when the budget came to us, the second part two, when we had the COVID, was to ask for a 0% rate rise because of the COVID, and I was asking what the implications of that would be, and the implications were pretty well spelled out by our financial staff. That the implications were that it would leave a fairly major shortfall in the coming year, the 2021 budget, and unfortunately, a 2% rise, which what this budget is predicated on. We still have CPI increases, we still have staff wage cost increases, we still have material cost increases, and the increasing cost of getting works done have all got to be covered. If we went to a 0%, not only would we have a shortfall in the budget and have to probably cut some services, and then it's a matter of what services do you cut and how much, the increasing costs that, and council certainly not on their own in this. I think every person that has a house or works, or even if they don't work, have got to budget their money accordingly, and there's increased costs. And if you didn't have an increase in the money coming in, it would be hard to cover the increased costs. So whilst I initially thought that 0% was probably right, I'm happy with the 2% increase, and the shortfall just for 1 year would go into millions of dollars shortfall over the next 10-year plan, and completely throw the council's 10-year financial plan for the next council completely in disarray, and the effects would be not just over next year, but would be over a 10-year period. I'm fairly confident that there's a lot of COVID recovery money coming soon, and the budget is designed to take advantage of that. It's also designed to support our local businesses and assist them in recovery. I think now is probably not the time to cut costs on getting works done, but to instead keep works happening and assist local businesses to recover from COVID and stay alive. I do have reservations about the deficit, but I'm confident that the deficit will be for the year only. And if you put that over multiple years, there will be surpluses in other years that make up for the deficit. So whilst I have some reservations about the amount of deficit, we're certainly in a strong financial position, and I believe we can cover that. The only other comment I'd make is that this tonight's recommendation is to put the budget out for public consultation. So every member of the public can read the budget and make appropriate submissions if they have some concerns, whether that be about the increase, whether it be about the spending. Apparently there has been a large number of phone calls to the officers today in relation to a newspaper article this morning in the Bendigo Advertiser where our staff have been abused, verbally abused, and in all seriousness, that's just not on. By all means, if you're not happy with the budget, read the budget, put in your public consultation. You'll have an opportunity to speak to that public consultation at a future meeting, but ringing up and abusing our office staff who answer the phones is really not an appropriate way to deal with it. So if you've got things to say about the budget, put them in writing, and all councillors will get to see them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Petruccio. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, fellow councillors and officers, for their work. Yeah, I looked at the 3.4 million deficit and thought, oh gosh, that's quite big. And then we did some of the sums. So 2.75 million of that is actually money that should have been received. Gets very complicated. Can you help me out?
I was going to say we received it early.
We received money
In the
early, which
previous
should have
financial
been
year.
in this
No,
budget.
yeah.
So it's actually not quite as bad as you think. There's also $1 million that we think we've lost because of being a lot more easy on some of the charges we're going to make. And there's also, as part of this response, to support our much valued, we're working with our businesses in tourism, mental health training, the social and economic policy recovery plan, the community engagement platform, because it's much harder to do when you can't actually speak face to face with people, waiving a number of registrations and permits. So this to me is partly it's a false deficit because it's about where grants were paid at the end of the financial year or not. And partly it's a real deficit caused by our need to spend to get our community working again. And for that, I am really happy to support this budget. I think it's one that has compassion, it has foresight about how we're going to get back and get people employed again. And I'm really grateful that our staff have been thinking about it in these terms and have come back to us with all our input, with input we've had from people in the community in our first draft, and come up with something that I think is the best we can come up with in times in which you cannot do any predictions anymore because we're stuck if we know what's really happening. We can make a good guess, but we know it's got lots of wobbly edges on that guess. But it's a really good budget. Don't get hung up on the deficit because it's partly a false deficit and partly a real deficit caused by the need to spend on things our community needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Councillor Gardner.
Yep, I'd like to talk. Yes, please. I think obviously some council already mentioned some of the stuff. I mean, this was a doozy of a budget. We'd almost had it finished. COVID come along and just blew it out the water. And in that context, I think the staff did an incredible job. They had to revisit everything. But apart from that, they also had to continue delivering services and adapt to the new environment. So a lot of people had to work from home, services were ceased and staff redeployed, and all the while continuing of services. It really was a big effort. I don't think that we can underestimate that effort. Everyone's mentioned the deficit. Personally, I'm not that concerned about the deficit. I think it's government's role, and we are a form of government, that in the good times, you try and have a surplus, so then when the bad times come, you can go into a deficit to support our community, and this is what we're doing. I think, as Bron mentioned, there has been figures mentioned. Some of it is an impact of COVID of about the $1 million. Some of it is an accounting thing. But overall, we will have a lot of infrastructure spend in this. And this budget really is looking at helping our community, our people, and our businesses get through this bad time. The next year's budget is sort of, at this point, looking at sort of come back to about a zero. So we are not handing over to the next council a really dodgy thing that they have to deal with. We have dealt with it. Some of the things I would like to highlight, though, and I think people have mentioned, is the response to COVID hardship policy and that position. And we can't underestimate that, and hopefully this will support us through. There's many things in there, but I suppose as the Council for Tarrangower, I would particularly like to highlight the Malden Streetscape is funded. This is a huge investment made by the state government, and I know that my community has wanted this for nearly 50 years, and I'm excited this is finally going to happen. There's quite a number of infrastructure projects which hopefully will see and benefit employment in our community, and there's a lot of support for some of our Section 86s. Overall, I know people don't like deficits, but I do believe that in the current circumstances, what we've done is responsible. It's not a long-term deficit, it's a deficit to get us through this current issue. I obviously support this budget, and I'm looking forward to hear from people on their thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Garden. Councillor Lee.
My fellow councillors have covered most of it. I think there's not too many gaps. But let's just bring up a little point. I find the budget excellent. It's been a tour de force, and what I find particularly interesting is where it compares line items this year to next year, because there is a function of management called management by exceptions. And I would advise everyone to have a look, and where there is a big change from one year to the next, ask why, or where we know we've done something and there's been no change, ask why. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lehman. Always a interesting start on to. And so thank you, Councillors. I take the budget as well and truly passed. And so I declare that matter carried. And I would just like, before we move on to the next one, to thank my fellow councillors for their close observance of the budget document, their efforts, along with our phenomenal efforts from the staff, from the executive, down to all the people who work for councillors, giving their lives to what should go into not only the big ticket items that we're always interested in, the capital works, which we must deliver, but the small things. I have 10 pages here of operational items. We don't normally consider this level of detail as councillors looking at the budget, but we have, I don't know how many, probably hundreds of items put forward by staff under each business unit. Not so much saying more money, though there are, and they're put under 3 headings of continuity. This is all the COVID-19 response: continuity, care and compassion, and economic stimulus. So, for example, tourism destination marketing and promotion is getting a boost of $50,000 this year in operations, just to help our tourism sector get more promotion out there in Victoria and beyond, to bring people back, because that's desperately needed, so that all our businesses who thrive, from retail to hospitality, tourism and beyond, can actually benefit, and people can feel it. And so it goes on. A lot of waiving charges for those people in need, and that will certainly flow into the next item on the agenda, our COVID-19 financial hardship policy. So magnificent work from our staff there, considering in detail how their particular business unit can serve the community at this time and help recovery. Yes, I too was terribly shocked when I opened the revised budget, revised to us, to see a $3.4 million deficit sitting there. And if I'd had the opportunity to talk to the journalist from the Bendigo Advertiser, I would have explained a few things. However, unfortunately, I was not able to get to the phone the deadline of 4 o'clock, and so the headline came out as we're sliding into a deficit of 3.4 million, thanks by and large to the Victorian Grants Commission, who in their wisdom, because they want to clear their books, gave us $2.75 million of next year's funding, which comes from the federal government through Victoria. Every council gets it in accordance to their needs, the number of people, etc., etc. It's kind of what funds our bread and butter jobs are, our roads, our drains, etc., etc. That money came in early, so it cannot sit in the comprehensive income statement for the next year's budget. It's sitting there in the cash. You can see it as we go to the balance sheet. We'll have the money to spend, but it can't appear. If we take 2.75 away from 3.4, my calculations say it comes out about 650,000, which, considering that our COVID-19 response is costing us on balance just over $1 million, if we weren't doing that, we'd have a comfortable surplus, small but moderate. But in the, as my fellow councillors have so well pointed out, this is an exceptional case, and we can justify going into the red, going into a deficit for this matter. So thank you, fellow councillors, and I'm very pleased to have worked with you all together to put together this budget. And I'll now move on to the next item, which is the COVID-19 financial hardship policy. And I'd like to ask the councillor if we could move that. Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to, this is a financial hardship policy with regards to COVID-19. I'd like to move the recommendation as printed that Council adopts the COVID-19 financial hardship policy.
Thank you. Rowan, second. Thank you, Councillor Petruska. Would you like to speak to your...
Just briefly, Mayor. Look, every family, everyone knows how deeply the community's been impacted by COVID-19. They're certainly unprecedented times, and what Council has done in developing this policy is coming up with a set of guidelines of how we might assist people in some financial way where they can demonstrate serious financial hardship. And that doesn't mean that everyone will qualify for this, but what it does do is it sets down the way that with fees and charges that Council will work with people. Bottom line is we're ratepayers, we all have to pay rates, but it sets down the way that we will be able to help people meet their financial obligations, and I commend the policy to all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Nope. Councillor Petruska, any other councillor wish to speak on the matter? No, thank you. I think it's very pleased with this policy that has to ride alongside our budget here, and we've made allowances for it, obviously. Not everyone will qualify, but I would encourage any, I declare the matter carried, by the way, I'm sorry, but I would encourage any member of the public who feels that they should qualify, and certainly in terms of rates or other council charges, to make contact with our staff. That's the important thing. Begin the dialogue, have a conversation, ring up, ask to speak to someone, and start the conversation about it. Yes, Councillor.
Mayor, I'll just probably note for our not-for-profit entities that operate within the Shire, there are some issues or some points covered there around fees and charges. So anyone that's operating in that area of the community, I'd recommend they look at that and see what they're entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's important. Small document, should be able to find it. It will be up in our policy soon, but it's also in the agenda papers, which are online. Or you can ring up and get a copy. Thank you. Right, so the next item that's been passed is the finance report for the quarter. Do I have a mover for the noting the finance report? Councillor Nation, yes, and the seconder? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Like to speak to your motion? More finance? Councillor Nation?
Thank you very much, Mayor, fellow councillors. This is a report up to the third quarter of this financial year, and it puts us in a very good position. I commend people to read it. If they're going to have a look at our budget report, I suggest they have a look at this. One of the things that has been introduced into this reporting system now on our page 3, for example, is we've now got some key financial ratios that enable us to be able to tell at a quick glance whether our liquidity is right and you know, have we got enough money to pay what we need to pay. And so far we're doing incredibly well on our liquidity and our working capital, unrestricted cash and cash holdings. So these are the sorts of things that enable us to think, okay, we're doing okay. And when you have a look at our budget, these indicators are also in there for our whole budget. And again, they're saying that it's fine, relax guys. So they're important things to look at. Our capital grants, our capital spending is a little slower than we would prefer. And that's not going to be a surprise to anyone. So that's just how it is. We are underspending according to how we thought we were going to be. And again, that's not a surprise. This is, it might be the March quarter, but things were starting to be impacted during that quarter. And we should be aware of that. Bushfires didn't come here, thank heavens, but they were starting to impact on our operations through our emergency services being involved in some of the bushfires. So we're healthy. It's good to look at. 3/4 of the way through. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Gardner?
I'll look briefly. I mean, I think Councillor Maiden picked that up. This is to the end of March. COVID, trying to think, it seems such a long time ago now, being in lockdown and whatever, it's like years ago now. It was around about 15th of March, I think, is when it started. So not a lot of real impact in some ways on the budget. Overall, at that point, we were tracking to a surplus, and obviously in the current budget, which we've just discussed, that surplus will probably grow because of that money that we received in advance and things like that, which should offset the budget we've just put out. But as Bronwyn has mentioned, we are in a very good financial position.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Forney.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to comment in terms of the fact that we are underspent in this financial year, and I certainly commend our friends in the media to have a look at the figures in terms of council's financial shape. It's in very sound financial shape. We're underspent this financial year, and that will probably remain so for this final quarter of the year. So if you balance up our next year's budget with the likely result for this year, council will still be in a very sound financial shape, and it's a very well managed council. So I'm happy to support the finance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corney. Any other councillor wish to speak? I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Move on to the annual report, progress report, quarter 3. To note the progress report, the annual plan progress report. Council, any councillor wish to move it? Oh, Councillor Nation. Yes, drive seconder. Councillor Gardner, thank you. Would you wish to speak to a motion?
Well, the motion is that council notes the annual plan progress report Q3. Basically, what I said about the finances is applicable. These are all what we are looking at here, are the highlights of our annual plan and how we're going against them. Yeah, we're going pretty well, guys. That's always a good thing to see. So I'm not mentioning the dog park. Thank you.
It's traditional.
It might be traditional, but I'm not mentioning. There are some things in here that are really about the long-term thinking for this shire. And so, for example, preparation of developer contribution plans for Harcourt. That's really about, and you know, Councillor Cordy should mention and be happy about this. This is about how we help that grow. The design guidelines for Malden, you know, again, it's creating that level of certainty. Oh, all of these are big things that matter to our shire. So I'm not even going to mention waste because that is such a big one, but it is something that we are trying to stay on top of in a policy environment that is constantly changing and hopefully improving, because it's certainly needed to improve, not us, the whole state and federal. So it's a good annual plan showing that we are thinking big and progressing things for our shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Gardner.
I mean, really, this is just, I mean, it's almost obsolete now, really. So, I mean, it's showing the progress up to March. Most things were sort of on track. And I will mention it, the one that really stands out is the dog park.
Oh, thank you.
But obviously, as councillors, I know there's been a lot of interest in dog park, and we're hoping that's going to really have some movement soon. Overall, we were on track. Obviously, COVID-19 is going to do some changes in that, but I'm confident we'll get through it. And if it doesn't get done in this cycle due to that disruption, it'll get done in the next one.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other councillors? On the dog park, or any other Thank you, and I declare the matter carried. And the ready to mention the dog park. Move on to our planning matters for the changing the home and first of all, I have an item before me, the use and development of land at 11 Merrifield Street, Castle Lane. Now, do I have a motion here, Councillor? I recommend a motion. Yes, Councillor.
So I would like to move the motion as printed with an additional clause. I'll read it out. It's only 2 sentences. So it'll be a clause 14, and it'll be titled Environmental Health. 14.1, noise from any associated pump, generator, amplified music and such need to comply with EPA noise guidelines and not create a public health nuisance as defined in the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008. And 14.2, there must be no discharge of contaminated water from the property.
Thank you. And so in the existing one in the agenda, the conditions in the agenda or the motions.
All the rest are as is.
So that becomes number 15. So this is used, right, so in your slightly amended one, the last item, so we're now slightly rather than 14. In the printed and published agenda, the recommendation has 14 conditions.
Sorry, so
change to, add in a new one,
add in a
13, call it 14, okay. And then, and here it is on the screen in front of us. Thank you very much, our invisible
people
assistants. And so it's coming up, you can see all the conditions there, and then there we
It
go.
becomes 15.
So that's what you
comes 15.
14, existing 14 becomes 15.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So it's that one there that
Thank you
goes
very
in.
All right, so we have a motion before us. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder for this motion? Oh, thank you, Councillor Patricia. Is the motion opposed? All right, thank you. In that case, Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Certainly. This is an unusual application, there's no doubt. So it's not the standard run of the mill. And I must admit, my first thought when I saw it was, what an amazing dad, building a water slide to his kids. And I had a vision in the back paddock, and I must admit, as a father, I would have loved to have done it. In our objective meeting, though, I was pretty concerned to hear from Ken and Kay, who are the neighbours, and they certainly raised some issues around amenity issues. And it was concerning, I suppose, the applicant didn't make things any better, and in these circumstances, it's always unfortunate, but these really aren't part of our consideration. But Ken and Kay's stories did disturb me. A subsequent visit to the property, I had a vision of a very large water slide as you sort of climb up it, and it was some big industrial thing. It wasn't really like that. It's sort of a tunnel down a slope, and I must admit I thought it looked good. The owner had obviously done also quite a bit of work in terms of drainage for dam spillage and coming over. And yeah, it looked good. I do see that potentially the pump wasn't running when I was there, so that's why that EPA noise amendment. I certainly did think about the contaminants, which I would imagine would mainly be sunscreen, and I can't see that's too great a deal. The loss of amenity for the neighbours was probably my biggest concern. And when I visited, the pump wasn't on, so I didn't actually hear it. I mean, I've lived with pumps, water pumps pumping. You can make them, you can dampen their sounds depending on how big it is, but it would probably really run over summer. I know to some people hearing screaming kids and their laughter and delight might be annoying sometimes, but to me that makes summer. The officer's recommendation is to approve it, and I support that. Yeah, and I suppose I did go and visit, and to me, I wasn't that concerned about it and believe it. I support the officer's recommendation for that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Patricia, do you speak now? Or?
Yeah, I'll speak now. I think all councillors present at the applicant objector meeting. This is in fact
sorry, we should just for public
Clarity
point out it was actually a Zoom meeting.
There was a Zoom meeting, yes. We had a internet meeting of councillors and the applicant and the objector to see if we could resolve the issues between them. I've got to say, I had some really serious concerns about some of the animosity that was obvious, and I thought probably unwarranted, but that's not something that we can consider as part of the planning application, which needs to be taken on its merits. It is in fact a retrospective application in that this has already been built, and it's something I would normally be extremely uncomfortable with. The reason this needs a permit is because it's a heritage area, and I take on board the applicant's saying that he was not aware that this would be covered by the heritage overlay and therefore built it without a permit. So this is in fact an existing structure but needs a permit to remain there. I've also been to have a look at it physically, and my initial thoughts without seeing it was I had some fairly serious concerns about a structure that's not far from the boundary of another property. But seeing it in person, there's a number of landscaping and various other requirements in the permit that I think will assist in making it less visible. It would be pretty much strictly a summer period only use, and the additional item that's been put in, I think covers some of the objections. So I am supporting the issue of the permit. I would hope that some of the issues between the neighbours settle down as a result of this going ahead, and that there be no further, how can I put it, animosity between the two. I won't say too much more, but I hope that there's no ongoing issues between the neighbours as a result of it.
Thank you, Councillor Patricia. Speaking against the motion, Councillor Corey.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I think we understand this issue. For me, there's still outstanding objections of neighbours whose lifestyle and amenity is directly impacted by the development. What I would say is council permits and approval are aimed at providing safe solutions for buildings and structures. There's very strict rules around pools and spas, and the facility contains many aspects of these, but none of the safety and health controls around pools and spas. It's a retrospective permit, it's a heritage area, and certainly the structure does not satisfy the requirements of the heritage overlay. And I think it's totally inappropriate, and I support the objectives because I think they've been very, very unfairly treated in this whole situation to date. And if it had come to council beforehand, it would be a different scenario, because I'm sure many of the safety and heritage concerns could have been properly addressed. So the applicant has failed to address those issues, and I'd strongly recommend to councillors that they reject the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Councillor Mason? Sorry, I should ask, is there anyone else speaking for the motion?
I'm not sure yet.
Councillor Mason can see in that case, while you're making up your mind.
I've got a bit confused at the beginning somewhere.
Thank you. Fellow councillors, I'm voting against this, and what triggered me to do that was two things. And I suspect there are a whole lot of councillors going up Merrifield Avenue. So I'm glad we didn't have an accident as we did that. There are two main reasons. And one is, if I put myself in the chair of this, sitting here, this had come to us before it was built, I think there would have been a lot more exploration of how it could have been built to have satisfied all conditions. So I don't think it would have been built as it is built now. And I don't want to give retrospective approval to something that, if we then have a look at the decision guidelines for rural living, it actually does talk about landscape and heritage value of the area, contrary to the conservation, protection and maintenance of the heritage setting, would impact on the area in terms of siting, design, bulk, colours and materials to be used, and the impact would be on the natural environment, as the objectors pointed out. And it has not sufficiently demonstrated how the amenity of the surrounding area will be protected. And in fact, it's clearly demonstrated that it does not protect the surrounding area. So I think it's a great thing. If I were a dad or a mum, Councillor Gardner, I would also think it a great asset. And it could have been built to have met all needs of the children and the family who have built it and the neighbours. But this is a lost opportunity. And it's a lost opportunity not just about ignorance of coming to council to get the permits, because that should have been a fairly clear thing, and we shouldn't just say, oh, it wasn't obvious, because it's fairly obvious. And the second thing around that is it just could have been better, and it isn't. And I probably would have said yes if it had come to us with all the changes that could be made to improve that amenity for everyone. So I'm voting against it on planning grounds, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Neal.
I'm in two ways about this, but in the end, what turned it out for me is I've had it up to the back teeth with retrospective approvals. They're all over the place at the moment. We've got approvals given in retrospect, and I think, as Councillor Mason said, we miss out on a great opportunity to do some good stuff.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, you don't have to speak.
Yeah.
I can,
Do I get a right reply?
you can have a right of reply. I'm just waiting to see if Councillor Lesser wishes to speak before asking you.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
I have thought fairly long and hard over this one. I did have some questions from the Murray Goulburn water requirement, and I did expound that to our planning officers, and I did get some.
Can you speak up a
Yeah,
bit?
sorry, I did get some of the details regarding the contamination point. This is a real difficult situation. I'm looking at it from another point of view, and I've got to make up my mind that it could possibly go to a VCAT decision. And that, and I realise that that's not our problem in a way, but it also, either way, this is very difficult because it's going to impinge upon the person, the applicant, because if the use is objected to, then we'd have to go to VCAT if the neighbours object, and that's going to take some time. If as a council we don't approve it, the same situation is going to apply as well. So it really is a difficult situation. I'm concerned, and I still am, and I still haven't got my answers regarding the health aspects of this slide. I am really concerned about the health and safety, and I would have liked to have had more, I don't know, decision, but more investigation, because I'm not personally wasn't quite satisfied with the answers. So that's the difficulty that I find myself in. Do you want to know which way I want to go?
Well, I will call
No, maybe you
I will
still
ask
have to
her.
Ah, sorry, yes,
Councillor
okay.
Garden, if you have a right of reply,
Yes, he
then
has
I'll
got a right of reply.
call the vote on the motion.
That is a difficult one. I can see. This is going.
Councillor Garden.
Thank you. Look, it is a difficult one. I think we all acknowledge that, and it's an unusual one. But I suppose I'll just make some comment. The retrospective thing, I agree, Councillor, that it's not ideal. I could see how, though, the applicant could think that the permit wasn't required. I mean, it is really it's not as high as the neighbouring fence. It's sort of a tunnel on an embankment. And it is a grey area, and I think that's also, caused us a little bit of confusion, and the applicant himself. In terms of a heritage, I mean, to me, when I went and visited, it seems to have been done in a way that it doesn't stand out like, I was trying to find a different word, but you said it, Bronwyn, sort of blended in a bit, and they are doing some more bush planting, the health and safety. I get the thing for pools and spas, but it really is at the risk of the owner. And he is doing quite a bit of more planting. I think there's been more done. And I must admit, I saw there obviously was some substantial works done on improving drainage at the front, obviously for the overflow from the slide, but also like the front area and fence. I mean, it looked good, I thought personally. So it is a difficult one, but I would encourage my fellow councillors to support it if possible.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Well, we have a motion. It is proposed. Councillor Gardner has proposed it, seconded. Those in favour of the motion? And those against? The motion is not carried.
I have an alternative motion.
You better move it.
I got convinced by Councillor Gardner.
So can we just have a division for the sake of the
Oh, certainly, yeah, corporate division.
The record.
Those in favour of the motion, please. Councillors Gardner, Patricia and Messer. And those against the motion, Councillors Corley, Machen, Henderson and Lehman. Thank you. And now, in order to have a resolution on this, I think I better ask Councillor Machen if she could move an alternative motion or another motion.
Another motion. That council issue a notice of decision to refuse a planning permit for the use, development and earthworks for a water slide and a new front entrance gate and changed access at 11 Merrifield Street, Castlemaine, subject on the following grounds. 1. The water slide and associated works does not protect or enhance the landscape and heritage value of the area. 2. The water slide and associated works is contrary to the conservation, protection and maintenance of the heritage setting. 3. The proposed water slide would impact the area in terms of siting, design, bulk, colours and materials to be used on the natural environment. And 4. The proposal has not sufficiently demonstrated how the amenity of the surrounding area will be protected from noise.
Thank you, Councillor Machen. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Neiman. Is there any opposition? You. We wish to continue the debate, or are we happy just to move to vote on that? Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I'm happy just to move to the vote.
Any other councillor wish to speak for or against on this motion?
I mean, the only thing I'd like to point out that I think the applicant, and it is retrospective, so will incur a significant cost in taking it out and putting it back to the way it was. And I think it's probably unreasonable, really, considering the scale of things isn't that huge. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Yes,
I mean, the only thing I'd be against the motion. I mean, the officer's recommendation is strictly just a recommendation, but they are professionally qualified staff, trained in planning and all the laws and regulations behind it. And whilst I have probably sometimes voted against an officer's recommendation, I usually do so with a fair amount of misapprehension. And even though this is retrospective, and I don't disagree, because I actually agree with my fellow councillors who expressed concerns about that, and I did express the concerns. I don't like retrospective either, but it is what it is. I'm always loath to go against officers' recommendations, particularly on something it's a very unusual thing. I don't think I've ever seen an application like this before. And the heritage area, to put in context, I describe it as acreage living. It's not like it's in the main street of Malden or Castlemaine, where a heritage area in a suburban setting would be, to me, somewhat different. I have some concerns about the heritage, but not to the extent that I would have if it was in a suburban heritage area. And have to express concerns about, likely it would go to VCAT. I'm presuming the applicant will take it to VCAT, and I'm mindful that that will be a cost that council will have to defend any decision it makes, regardless of, and we'll have to get somebody from outside to defend that for us, which will be a cost to ratepayers. So I'll express my concerns and we'll see how we go. But I certainly have sympathy for the neighbour, but you know, I think it's got to be decided purely on planning grounds, and I don't agree with rejecting it on the planning grounds.
Thank you, Councillor Trissler. Did you wish to speak at this point? No. No. All right. Thank you. And not speaking. All right. Well, those in favour of the motion moved by Councillor Machin. Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item on our planning agenda, which is planning permit application for re-subdivision of 2 existing lots into 2 new lots at 4 Albert Street. Oh, yes, Councillor Mason, you're about to take a short break.
So I have a,
Yes.
really is a minor conflict of interest in terms of a close association with the applicants.
Thank you. So we will give you a while. Someone will remind me to come and get you. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Yes, there you do.
Councillor Lester.
Yes, my motion is the council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for subdivision of land in 2 lots for Albert Street, Chewton, and it's subject to the following conditions as listed.
Thank you. So you're moving to approve. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Is there any opposition? No, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly, it is just for a 2-lot subdivision. I know that there's a whole lot of talk about this, that, and the other, and more development. That will be looked at a future date. If you know, we all have aspirations, whether they come off is another story. We can only look at what we've got in front of us. And at this point in time, it's just a 2-lot subdivision. And as the planning department don't see any problems with it, I think that's all that we can look at. And anything future, we will have to look at it on its merits. So that's why I'm supporting what our officers have basically said.
Thank you. Who seconded this? Councillor Cartman, sorry. Do you wish to speak on this, Councillor Cartman?
Yeah, briefly, I support the officer's recommendation. It is only at this point a 2 subdivision. Obviously, we've been made aware by objectors that there's potential advertisement to make it into a bigger subdivision, but that will have to come back to a decision for council. So at the moment it's just a 2. Yeah, I can't see any particular issues personally with it, and would just recommend that we support it.
Thank you. Yes.
I probably will add something quickly. Just to clarify, it's already a 2-lot subdivision. So it's not a single lot being developed into 2, it's 2 lots. And there's some alterations to the boundaries of those 2, whereby an existing house will have a smaller allotment, and the vacant land, which is now going to be a larger allotment than what was previously, will actually have an access from the road that it didn't actually have before. It was pretty much landlocked by the other lot. So there's no changes, no particularly great changes. It is simply a 2-lot subdivision. Just the existing house stays on a smaller block, and the land becomes larger with an access. There is obviously a possibility, and it was brought up during the objection meetings, applicant objection meetings again that we had via Zoom, that the concerns were for future redevelopment, but I have to reiterate what Councillor Lesser said, is that any future application for that larger block, should we approve it, would be the subject of a complete new application, and would have to comply with all the fire regulations imposed by the CFA. And whilst there's some suggestion was put forward that there's an aspiration to subdivide that into a very large amount of lots, the reality is that the current rules would probably not allow that. But in any case, that would be judged when that happens, and at this stage, that's not happening. So we can't take that into account in our decision making.
Very true. Thank you much, Councillor Patricia. Yes, Councillor Cordy.
I'd like to speak against it, Mayor. I've noted that there's 6 objections, with a significant number, so that's why I'm speaking against it. But it's also covered by the bushfire management overlay, and I think there's a big problem in some of these areas in terms of people putting dwellings where there isn't sufficient or proposed future dwellings, and I know that matter's not before us, but putting proposed future dwellings in areas where there's very limited methods of egress, and certainly this down the track has the potential to impact on existing residents in the area. So I'm not able to support it on safety grounds. Thank you.
Nip it in the bud. Right, thank you, Councillor Cordy. Any other councillor wish to speak on this matter? No. All right, well, I'll put it to vote. So those in favour of Councillor Lesser's motion and those against? The motion's carried.
Revision.
Could someone?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor, just you are calling for a division?
No.
Wake up here.
Too late. Oh, right.
Yes,
All
wrong.
right, vision until we move on to the next one. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and welcome back to the table. So we'll have one last planning application to consider tonight, and that's a planning application for the use and development of a dwelling at Conlon Road, Taradale.
I have a motion,
Yes.
but it's not as printed, and it's an alternative motion, and it's very lengthy, so I'm hoping the wizard in the sky will make it appear.
So we're hoping to share the screen. And
Oh, wonderful.
you have the power.
Look at that power.
Well done.
Look, essentially, it's,
You might have to talk us through it a little bit as you scroll.
well, I wasn't going to go through all of it. Essentially what it is a decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of a dwelling and outbuilding at Conlon Road, Taradale, and within it, they are obviously
going with audio.
Thanks, Gussie.
That's usually what
We need to be full screen, that's all, Darren. Or is that, yeah, that's under your control. Good. We're there. You're muted.
We're back.
Okay. Welcome back. Thank you very much. Technical people, I believe. Councillor Gardner, would you like to pick up where you left off? You've just moved an alternative motion.
I did,
For item 10.
and it appeared on the screen,
Commons Road, Taradale.
Taradale.
Thank you, CEO. And I'm the seconder, again, councillor Machen. There was no opposition, and you were about to speak to your motion.
Okay. So, yet again, this is another proposal in a farm zone seeking to build a house on a property on a size which is, I think it's 9.55 hectares. And pointing out, I just need to stress again that under the planning framework, building a house on a size under 40 hectares is not prohibited. It needs a permit, which is this is seeking it. I was also really interested that the neighbouring properties were of around about the same size, and they also had houses on them, but they objected. The applicants, to me, when we met them in the objective meeting, they're seeking to develop a winery and raise sheep, regenerate the land and control weeds and pests. And I needed to sort of also highlight that that night they are actually consolidating 2 blocks into one to make up that 9 hectares. I was quite impressed with the applicants and their history. One of the applicants historically has been a farmer, has been his partner, and they want to move there, and he intends to make this property a full-time job for him. They have developed a farm plan, which to me demonstrates that there is a linkage between needing a house on the property to successfully manage the winery, sheep, and manage their weeds. So I would recommend to all councillors that they support my alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Machen, you
Wish to speak first. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I did second it. I think I jumped in ahead of another councillor. My apologies. Thank you, Councillor Gardner, and I do support this revised alternative motion. And I have a history of sometimes supporting a house in farmland on a small block and sometimes not. And the thing that always brings me over to supporting it is that there is a farmland that looks as though it has a chance of improving that block and bringing some productivity back into the region. I wish them the best of luck in making it a really good business farm. I suspect it won't ever make them rich, but that's not required under our planning scheme. Under our planning scheme, it requires that it is farmed. So I also understand why they need a house to be on that property. Even on my tiny little property of 300 square metres, if something is behind the house and I don't see it, there are weeds. You actually do need to cast your eye over if you're doing any intensive vegetable growing, winery, making sure everything is fine. And finally, my fear is if we don't approve this, it will become even more weedy and more of a danger for surrounding farms. So by allowing somebody to live here, to farm it well, we're actually also looking after the surrounding farms. So thank you for your alternate motion, and I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Machen. Yes, Councillor Patricia.
Yeah, I'm actually supporting it as well, obviously. I will say that I normally don't support these on under 40 hectares in a farm. The exceptions are, as Councillor Machen pointed out, where there's a farm plan. And it seems to be that people can sometimes put any old farm plan to try to get house approved, no intention of farming. But I was quite impressed, not only with the farm plan, but the applicant, who's a born and bred farmer, and he's also working in the field presently, the type of farming he goes into. So he certainly has from all accounts, appears to have enough experience and ability to actually make a go of this as a small farm. And to me, that is the intent of allowing a house on these developments is when it is actually going to be farmed. And as such, I'm happy to support it. And that will make the land more productive, hopefully get rid of all of the weeds that would merely continue to grow if nothing happened and nothing was done there. And it actually will improve the area as well. So on that basis, I am happy to support it. There's some fairly strict conditions in the motion, but some of them have pretty much already been, for example, in relation to the farm plan's already been done. And so I wish them the best with it if it all goes ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cordy, you to speak? No? Councillor Lehman?
Yes, just a couple of points. These, in the future, these are going to come up time and time again. More often we knock on the door at VCAT, the closer we are to changing the zoning rules. And the other thing is, I took a drive out there to have a look, and it's a mixed bag, the surroundings, I have to tell you, because one of the properties just down the road looks to be a graveyard for old English cars. But across the road is a market garden. So it's a mixed bag.
Thank you, Councillor Lehman. Well, there being no opposition, and councillors having spoken, I declare the matter carried. And have my support. I'm personally pleased to see this one be approved. I am always concerned that we do not just have a proliferation of what we call lifestyle homes. With no need to have a house on a very large area of what is farmed. It has been cattle on that land, standing sideways on the slopes for a long time. But it is very weedy as well, and you always take it on faith that the farm management plan that's proposed and the applicant really means to do it. You do take it on faith that they will carry out this plan, and I think in this case I do have pretty strong faith that it will happen, and that would be a great benefit to the area in general. So thank you fellow councillors for supporting that. Being my hometown, I know. It was the place where gold was first discovered in Paradale, so it's a very damaged area in terms of landscape, very upside down country. Thank you. So now we move on. We've finished with our planning applications, and then we move on to the report of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee meeting of 28th of May. Councillor Lester.
Yes, Mayor, I am going to put a motion up that, according to the recommendation, that we note the report of minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 28th of May 2020, and we note that the draft Audit and Risk Advisory Committee charter that's coming to us 21st of July for the council meeting. And thirdly, to approve Nicole Cox as chair of the Audit and Risk Committee from 1st of July 2020 to 30th of June 2021, and Linda McNeil as the deputy chair of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee from the 1st of July to the 30th of June.
Thank you. Do I have a second of that motion? Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Is there any opposition? No? Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, just
as one of the councillors who sits on this.
Yeah, just briefly. Again, when we did this last time, is to thank the previous chair, Ken Belford, for the 9 years of service that he gave to this committee. And I'm sure that it's in capable hands with these two people as the chair and the deputy chair. They're both very competent people. In the short time that I've been on that committee, and this is a very active committee. It asks a lot of questions, And we had the auditors in at the last meeting, and that was quite good and instructive. And I'm pleased the way that that's all working, and they listen to different questions and provide the answers. And I think it's a great thing that we're doing, and it really provides that check and that balance for council. So that's why I'm recommending that we support the minutes of that and approve the people, the personnel in their new positions.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Councillor Corey, did you wish to speak? Is there any opposition? I don't think I asked. No. Okay. Thank you. I declare the matter carried. And so now we move on to a different section, our people. And we have now the adoption of the Mount Alexander Shire Council Reconciliation Plan. We have a recommendation that we adopt the Mount Alexander Shire Council Reconciliation Plan. Do I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Motion, yes, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Trusler, thank you. Is there any opposition? Councillor Motion, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Thank you very much, Mayor. It's good to get to this stage, and it's been a bit of a journey. So the journey was, we thought we had to go through a very, very strict structure set up by Reconciliation Australia to develop a reconciliation action plan. And we tried doing that, we tried twice, and it just doesn't quite work for us because we have such a good relationship through our Indigenous Roundtable and through many years of this council working with our Indigenous population, who have a very strong voice, and we actually do listen to it. And I think if you have a look at our new children's playground in Victory Park, you'll see the strength of that working together. And I'd like to register a complaint that we didn't win a Heart Award for that.
Yes.
All the other councils that won were bigger councils than us, so I think there should be some leeway for small councils doing great work. So this wasn't something that we did without consultation with the Jajawara and Jarajara people, and we will keep going and keeping on that consultation. The reconciliation plan captures our existing reconciliation ongoing activities, and we've implemented a lot, and it will provide council with a comprehensive framework that brings together existing activities and aspirations. So it's flexible, and does also acknowledge that we do have, it's not just the Jajawarung here, we have a tiny sliver of land. I think your ward, maybe?
Barfold.
Barfold, that is part of the Tangrang people. I'm having trouble with English today. I apologise, let alone foreign words. To me that are foreign. They're very ancient, this land, but they're foreign to me. So it's a good time to bring this in a time when there is worldwide unrest around Black Lives Matter. Here we are working at a local level in a very peaceful, constructive, consultative way, in a way that actually doesn't require us to spend a lot of money. It is around how we deal with each other and how we engage early rather than late. And so I think it's a very powerful tool and framework for us, and I recommend it.
Thank you, Councillor Motion.
Fairly briefly. I'm also fairly happy that we didn't adopt some sort of generic plan because it really did not suit, it just did not fit our Shire nor our local Indigenous people. And so therefore we've tailored a fairly specific reconciliation plan that suits our fairly unique conditions in the Shire. And we've had a great rapport with our members, local Indigenous community, and we certainly, in these fairly difficult times, the mutual respect and understanding that we've had for a period of time now, we obviously wish to continue, and I think the plan will continue to go towards that. So I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Patricia. Any other councillor wish to speak? Well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. And following on from that, we've got something called the volunteer support policy and the recommendations that we adopted. Do I have a motion, Councillor Lehman? Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Russell. Is there any opposition? Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Lehman?
Very briefly. In the country with its lower population, it runs on volunteerism. They have a policy and the recognition, I think, is a very good thing.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Lester, you wish to speak?
Yeah, just for a few minutes. Personally, I enjoy volunteering. I'm a big time volunteer, but I think going on memory, haven't this Shire got one of the highest rates of volunteering? Just in the back of my mind, and so this whole Shire does work a lot with volunteers on various different projects, and it's surprising how people come out of retirement to do volunteering, and it's a great thing, and it really does help. There's heaps of expertise from people that have retired from the workforce, and I think it adds richness to the community. And to have a policy that's important, because we have volunteers have rights as well, and it is good to lay out their roles and responsibility so that the paid staff know, the volunteers know what's happening, and like some of the things, we're going to provide a supportive and safe work environment. So these things are really important. So being written down, we have a policy that we can adhere to. And as I said, it's great to be a volunteer, and more people should volunteer, because it really helps you in your life.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Patricia.
Just the important part for me out of this was that we're going to comply with the Australian voluntary standards as part of the policy. I think that's really important. And I reiterate that, a lot of things in our Shire simply wouldn't function if it wasn't for the volunteers. Our kids wouldn't be able to play sport. Our reserves wouldn't be kept in the condition that they're kept, and they're not all perfect by any means, but they would be absolutely terrible if we didn't have volunteers doing the work. Our halls, our other community facilities, land care, etc., it just goes on. So I think it's very important that as a Shire, we continue to support the volunteers, and I fully support the policy.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No. Well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. And now we move on to the next section, the last section, I think, called Our Place, which is the officer report.
Yes.
And a small matter called the streetscape plans and design standards.
Streetscape.
So it's a very long running item. It came to council last month when I was not here, I was sick. And it's deferred, so it's back again. So councillors, do I have a motion?
You do have a motion, Mayor.
I'm glad to hear it. Good.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it.
We all are waiting to hear. This is okay. The first part that I'm going to read out is that the council notes the results of the community consultation undertaken on the draft custom-made streetscape plans and design standards. And this is where I'd like to bring in a change and say, and this is number 2, and the document that in front that has been presented to us is used as a baseline for further community involvement as per the community consultation plan summary, which I'm holding up, the capital works projects that we looked at just fairly recently. And that's part of my main part of the motion. I would like it to go out to further community consultation, and I'll explain why. So basically,
Hang on, wait. I'm still waiting for
the motion is the motion.
Motion.
The
But the
motion is,
document you have is an internal document. I don't believe it's been,
no, I just understand that. I'm
or
just
it's not
making
intended yet for public
consumption.
application, even though I hope it will be eventually because it's very good and very pertinent, but
Okay, so what
I need a motion that,
my motion is that we note the first part is okay, and number two is that the documentation in front of us, that's the draft plan, is used as a baseline for further community involvement.
use the Castlemaine streetscape plans and design standard documents.
Yes, as a baseline for
As
further
a
community.
baseline for
Further community consultation
further community
and involvement.
Consultation and involvement. Is that it?
Nick, can I just see clarification and just see if Councillor Les is happy to put the words, notes the results of community consultation so far in part one, because if we're going to go further consultation,
Yes, okay.
I think that needs to be clarified.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
Happy with that, yes.
To date, so far, to date,
Either one,
whatever.
which sounds better, Mr. Lesser.
It's okay, yes.
So far. Okay, so far. On the draft, Castlemaine Street Caving Bank. Okay, and use the draft. So therefore we need to put the draft in again. So let's see, we've got, notes the results of community consultation undertaken so far on the draft Castlemaine Streetscape plans and design standards. And two, uses the draft Castlemaine Streetscape plans and design standards as a baseline. So I don't have the document in there, because it's right. As a baseline for further community consultation and involvement.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah?
Okay, now,
Is that something that somebody can second?
I'm happy to second that.
Right, okay.
Just got some reservation about the wording.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a motion, not one that's printed in the agenda, but a variation on it. It's seconded by Councillor Patricia. Is there any opposition? Yes, okay.
No.
Well, in that case, Councillor Lesser, would you like to begin the debate?
Yes, Mayor.
Support your motion?
Support my motion.
Can we ask a clarifying question before we start?
Certainly.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll
I'm sort of struggling with what your motion means. So
Ah.
are you seeking this whole document, everything is back out for consultation? Is that what your motion is looking at?
Basically, we're saying that this is well, I'm trying to explain. It's a baseline for further discussion, and because and this is what we need to talk, because I believe there are significant
Okay, right,
changes.
that's right. The whole thing out for discussion again.
Basically, well,
But not
yes,
rewriting.
not rewriting it,
Tweaking.
discussion, yes.
Sorry, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so, yes, it is what it is. That's what you get from motions on the run without input from professionals. So, well,
Thank you, yeah, right, yes.
however, that's all right. So I've got a mover and a seconder. I've got some opposition. So I'm now, any other questions to be asked of the mover before we begin? No? All right. Off you go, Max.
To me, there's been a number of significant and future design elements that will have impact on this project since it was first proposed and the preliminary
I'm
designs.
going to have to ask you to speak up about this because I think your voice needs to go beyond this chamber. I recorded.
Okay, I'll start this one again. There have been a number of significant and future design elements that will have impact on this project since it was first proposed and preliminary designs adopted. And I've got a couple of examples. We've got a Victory Park play space, and that changed the visual landscape, and it also changed the community interaction of the area. The possible construction of a new supermarket on the edge of the designated area, that'll change the patterns of transportation, of walking, perhaps the connection between that and the rest of the community. So these were things that were not envisaged in the original design. And the other part that's missing is the highlighting of a couple of really special architectural significance in the Shire. And the two are Art Deco and Art Nouveau building details that need to be taken into account. And that does not appear in any of this document. And further, the COVID-19 impact on businesses, this is now in some of the design elements that we've looked at, is going to impact upon businesses in regard to delivery, the way that they connect to the public. And this has already been demonstrated. And again, that hasn't been taken into account. Obviously, it couldn't be in the original design. The other part that I've always had trouble with is that we have an opportunity here to do something fantastic, really fantastic. And that's what this place is about. And what we've been served up is, in my opinion, a mundane bit of stuff that really doesn't show the vibrancy of our community and the way that our community thinks, works and behaves. This is to me done by, I don't know, it's like a tick the box situation. And so that's why I feel pretty strongly about it. And I would like the community to have the opportunity now to really get into this one and have a look at, bring out the arts perspective, bring out the business perspective, and really do something fantastic. Because all that we seem to be doing is recreating some historical, some historical contents. Are we going to change all the light posts? Are we going to change, the lamps? Are we going to change the signage? There's a whole lot of things in here that to me are just sort of pseudo. And I also take on the observation and taking into account something my fellow councillor, Councillor Patrusma said about some of the designs of the furniture and so forth. Again, it's just a missed opportunity. And so I just wanted to go out there and say that the whole place, because this is really important for the Shire, that the whole place gets behind us and say, hey, this is our town, this is our main bit, Castlemaine, let's make it vibrant. And what I'm getting at, we start to do that in that play space. And that has all different sort of elements, new elements, design elements. And that's what I'm saying should be the thrust. So that's why I feel it should go back out for community consultation and real community involvement and talking to the business people. Because even though in our report it says that they were consulted, it appears that maybe some weren't, and there are new business people out there now as well. So I feel just strongly about it.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Yes, Councillor Patrusma, seconding the motion.
I've seconded the motion. I think the intent of the motion is for further consultation, and then it comes back to council again, and whatever we end up with then, I would imagine would be what we adopt. But we've been going at this particular one, I think it was November 2016, we commissioned this particular document. It's come to us a few times, and I'd probably say that pretty much all councillors have had some significant input into it from the start. It's been rejected multiple times by councillors and gone back and come back to us again. This is meant to be the most high-level document for Castlemaine's heritage streetscapes, basically that we've had or ever had. And if this is going to be the high-level document that sets in concrete the plans for Castlemaine going into the future, and ultimately, whilst there's no budget allocation for the majority of this, there's only some small portions of it are allocated, and that's only for design. But if this is going to be a high-level document, it needs to be right. And I've expressed concerns all along that I don't think it's right. And I still don't think it's right, which is why I asked it to be laid on the table the last council meeting when the mayor wasn't present. And there's very little difference between what was presented to us then and now. There's quite a lot of concerning matters for me. I believe that public consultation has not been done sufficiently. The fact that it's been out probably since this started in 2017 for online surveys, and it's gone out for consultation. There's been listening posts There's been designs presented. But there's only been 88 respondents from a shire of 18,500 people that have had a say in this document. Now, it does say that there's been a direct approach to traders and businesses within the Castlemaine CBD, but I've been approached by a few, and I haven't spoken to all, but I've been approached by a few who had no idea that this even existed, let alone the content inside it. I think traditionally we've done public consultation not as well as we could. I think the best public consultation this Shire has ever done has been over the climate change declaration, and into when I'm long gone, and our consultation to me just isn't there. So I'd like to see it go back out. That we use the document we've got as the base. It may only need some minor tweaks, as it turns out. There may not be a huge amount of change.
I actually want this out, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is when I have a look at the guiding principles that are in this document, they take into account so many of the things that Councillor Lesser just said. So reference the history of Castlemaine, green Castlemaine, improve pedestrian and cycle connectivity, apply universal design standards, expand the public realm, keep it quirky, have fun with temporary streetscape. I cannot speak tonight. Streetscape elements. So these are things that address it. And I also take a great deal of comfort from what's been put on the last page, which is further community engagement. Where it's a major change, there will be further community engagement. That's just how it's going to be. But the things that are high priority in this are refurbish and add street furniture. Why is that such a worry for you? Maintain footpaths. Well, gee, that needs to happen, although I'm sure the traders would actually like it not to happen right outside their front door, but that will be managed as a project. Maintain, restore and improve stone curbs, channels as required. Frederick Street, undertake detailed design and implement. Mostyn Street, undertake detailed design and implement. All of these things require that there is community engagement. It's built in there. So there's a whole range of things that are already in here that are really good, that promise that when we do anything that's other than probably, no, even doing the footpath is going to require major consultation just to make sure it works for the retailers, but it's promising that that will happen. I don't see why we need to go back. If we're going to do, quirkiness is built in there, public art is built in there, connectivity is built in there. Why do we have to go back and say, is this important? We know it's important. We've been told it's important. It's in all of our other strategies that it's important. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying we just go ahead and do it without telling the traders. It's really important. But this plan says anything that is a real change, we go and talk to them. So that's why I'm saying it's a pretty bland document as it is. It details what we're going to do and it tells us how we're going to do it. And it's based on really important principles. So please, let's get this darn thing off our books and start doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah.
Speaking of faraway Malden.
Faraway Malden, that's right. Here I am, sticking my nose in your Castlemaine. And I wanted to bring, there is bits of this that I will talk about, but I think, to me, I really would put to my fellow councillors, this is something that has been going on. So it started, in October 2015, 2016. It is a high-level plan, and I think, as Bronwyn's mentioned, there are lots of elements that will still have lots of community consultation and will change. By delaying it even further, it's possibly not going to be this council that would even approve it, and who knows what will happen in the future. It could blow out for years. This is a high-level document. And recently for me in Malden, we went through a similar process with the streetscape. Sort of not everyone was involved, had a group, everything. And I can tell you now, really, it wasn't until the announcement was made that people popped out. Why? Because they felt it will never happen. So you're not going to probably get people engaged in another round after we've done them all already, until it's going to become a reality, and then people will come out and have a say. And the plan actually caters for it. I just don't see any need to delay it any longer.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Now, anyone speaking for, anyone else speaking for Councillor Leslie's motion? Anyone else speaking against it? Okay, well, no one else is going to speak. We've got a motion on the books, which is to, more consultation, the more consultation motion, I should say, not more. So those in favour of more consultation? And those against? So the motion is not carried.
Division next thing.
Okay, oh, definitely, yeah. So, what are we calling for, the division? Yeah, okay. Those in favour of Councillor Lester's motion? Councillors Lester, Patricia and Cordy, and those against is Councillor Machin, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Neiman and Councillor Henderson. All right, now let's get this thing moving. Can I have a motion, please? Yes, Councillor Machin.
As printed in the agenda documents, that Council 1 notes, oops, I'm looking at it online, must be very exciting bit. Let me find it. Sorry,
Somebody else is planning for it. My goodness, nice question.
There it is. That Council 1 notes the results of the community consultation undertaken on the draft Castlemaine streetscape plans and design standards, and 2 adopts the Castlemaine street plan and design standard.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Do I have a second of that? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Opposition, I take it exists. I'm not going to put it to debate. I think everyone's spoken pretty passionately about their wishes. Those in favour of Councillor Machin?
I'd like to speak now against.
Oh yes, okay, please do. Yes.
But I'm happy for those to speak for it if they wish to first. But,
Okay.
no? Okay. Again, I'll repeat, this is meant to be the highest level document for Castlemaine Streetscape we ever had. And to me, it's been rushed through. I take on board that we want to get it done, but we have not budgeted any of this work in the next, we've just passed a draft budget to put out to public consultation, which goes till end of June 2021, earlier in the meeting. And there is not one single item on there to do any work on this project, except for a design for Frederick Street, which is not work, it's a design. So, and that can go ahead regardless of what happens with this plan. So I don't see the need. I think the consultation has not been done properly. I don't think people have been suitably consulted and are aware of some of the items in the document. To me, it's almost like another swimming pool on the Western. It's all very well to say, get it done, and then consult people when you're about to start it. But we all know that can bite us in places we don't want to be bitten. It's happened before, and I think we run the risk of it happening again. And I would much prefer that we get the document right rather than get it out there and it's not right. And I know there's elements in there that say we'll consult as we go, but to me that's not the right way to consult. And I urge my fellow councillors to speak again, to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Well, yes, unanimously.
Right. As someone who was on council during the Western Oval Pool thing, I'll tell you this is nothing like it. This is, here we've got a high level design. We're going to consult with you on a whole range of things as they come out. I take Councillor Gardner's wisdom from the real world, where it's when people see an actual drawing of a seat outside their shop, and that's where the consultation will be. That's when they'll come out and say, I don't like that. I do like that. I want it moved 3 feet. Because that's the concrete stuff. And there's also the higher level thing around. So, you know, I did put forward that with COVID-19, we should have more public tables and seats. That's already allowed within the current plan as it is. So it's not something that can go into a budget right now. You could, except for Frederick Street in design and development, which requires a lot of consultation, because part of it's going to happen as we're doing our renewal works on the footpaths. Part of it's going to happen when a new chair has to be put in. Part of it's going to be a really big thing like, are we going to put traffic lights in instead of the statue? That's going to create a huge discussion, but it's not finalised in here. It's saying, that's a thought bubble and we will consult. If we went and did it, that would be right on the streets without any further consultation. But here it's saying, we will consult.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Corley.
I would just comment, Mayor, that Castlemaine Streetscape's been evolving for about 165 years, and a little bit longer for public consultation wouldn't be a bad thing. We can always throw the baby out with the bathwater. But there you go. That's just my view.
Thank you, Councillor Corley. A very good contribution to the debate. Any other councillor wish to say something? Yeah, Councillor Lester.
Yes, well, it says if you adopt, and what it means is adopt. And this is my point. If there's some fundamental flaws, which I think there are, and as I said, there's changes in design circumstances that have already taken place, where in this document is that accounted for? I don't think it is, because what we're putting out in this document is, oh, you can have a bit of a comment about this, you can have a bit of a comment about this, yeah, that's great, this is this. But if there's a fundamental change, and this is what I'm saying, there's fundamental change, which I think there is, well, that isn't catered for, because that could change the dynamic. This is my point, that could change the dynamics. And we already, and that's the key that's missing, is that dynamic change. And we've already done some, okay, in Victory Park. So that was, we got a bit of quirkiness in there, and a bit of it. But there are some fundamental things in there that I think we need to take into account. So that's, and if you adopt it all, how do you fit that in? If it requires changes. So that was.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Oh, I haven't seen so much emotion further around the council table in a long time. This is brilliant.
Well, there you
We must
go.
have one every month. Okay, sorry about that motion. So now, those in favour of Councillor Machen's motion, which is the one as printed in the agenda, please show now. Those in favour and those against. So the motion is carried.
And I'll ask for a division again, thank you, Mayor.
Those in favour, the usual suspects of Councillor Gardner, and Councillor Machen, Councillor Meewood and Councillor Henderson, and those against, Councillor Trusmo, Councillor Lesser and Councillor Cordy. And I thank you, all councillors, for that valuable debate. But I do recall from my very long time in council, this origins of this whole thing is because councillors said we would like the footpath in Mostyn Street to be upgraded to something more suitable for our major shopping street. And this is the result. So be careful what you ask for. But I would agree with Councillor Gardner that the lack of responses to this document, I don't think are so much the fault of those consulting who are desperate to get responses, but you can only lead a horse to water. You can't make them fill in a survey unless they're interested. And it is a rather large document. I propose that by the time Frederick Street comes around, then it is budgeted in our budget we passed to do the detailed design. I should get down, get dirty, talk to people. They've already got a survey out. It's evoked some strong responses, and that's good because we definitely know what's not wanted, and it wasn't proposed anyway. But it will actually evoke responses, and that's what we want. So I can't see anything being imposed on this town that it doesn't want. I was there at the 1,000-strong protest that arrived when council proposed to put a aquatic centre, that's right, on the sacred ground. And on Saturday morning, a a public meeting was held and 1,000 people arrived. I stood and watched them arrive. I was there with the mayor at the time. I thought he was very brave to go up. And I have never seen so many people converge at Castlemaine anywhere really, apart from during the festival. It was very impressive. And then I knew that that was a special place. I can't see anything like that happening here, but I certainly hope we have some lively responses, and thank you all for your debate. Oh, and by the way, Councillor Corley, you should read a latest book about Castlemaine called Castlemaine the First 10 Years, 1851 to 1861. I think probably the creek was still flowing through Boston Street a lot of that time. But a very interesting story about how the first council meeting was in 1856. I think it ended in a brawl. But we're doing all right, but we are getting quite late.
We're much more civilised.
So thank you, councillors, and I'll now move on to petitions. Response to petitions, residents of Alaric Street and Christmas Street.
Happy to move that as per the recommendation here.
As per the recommendation. Before I get there, do you want to read it out to me?
That council notes that the works have been completed, and this has been reported to the first signatory of the petition, and that relates to the petition that was at the beginning of this meeting.
Excellent. So we've got that's a motion seconded by Councillor Cordy. Any opposition? Any speak to motion?
Just really quick, probably the fastest response to any petition ever, in that before we had the council meeting, it's actually been done and fixed. And I thank the staff, I thank the residents for raising the issue. It was an issue, but it arose accidentally because of a removal of a tree, and people took an opportunity, since there was now a blank space there, to start using it for vehicle access, where a tree previously blocked them, and our staff were very quick to respond and block it off again. So it's a pretty simple one, and I'm very happy that it was a very fast and good outcome.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patricia, I take it with no opposition, so I declare the matter carried, and move on to further response to petition for speed limit reduction on the Bendigo Sutton Grange Road and Faraday Sutton Grange Road. Councillor Cordy, I wish you to move that.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The recommendation is that council notes that the speed zone change will now be implemented in consultation with Regional Roads Victoria. Notes that outcome of the request has been advised to the first signatory of the petition.
Thank you, Councillor. I seconded by Councillor Patricia. Thank you. Any opposition? Like to speak to your motion, Councillor Cordy?
Yes, Mayor. I'll just note there that I do hope that Regional Roads Victoria has sufficient wisdom to read the detail of what the Sutton Grange community are wanting there, because I think that my understanding would be is that it's probably it's a bigger area or bigger length of road than just the main township area, but I think that needs to be clarified. But it does concern me the length of time this has taken to get this approval. Regional Roads Victoria is the referral authority, or the authority that controls speed restrictions on these roads, of course, but I can't believe how long it takes to get some of these things done. And,
It's happened.
well, has it happened? I don't think so. Anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Cordy. Any other councillors to speak on that? Well, I tell them to carry. As someone who used to drive that road every day, thank goodness. It's certainly about time that those speed actually goes to that area. It's very dangerous. All right, well, we're coming near the end of our meeting, Councillor, we're still alive, thank goodness. So we have a delegates report, mainly from our CEO. Is he going to appear to us? Yes, there he is.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Sorry, Darren.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor, yeah, CEO, please, would you like to speak to your report? Or?
Thank you, Mayor. As usual, we've tabled your and my activities for the last month and copies provided to the councillors. Just want to say, first of all, Mayor, thank you to all councillors for your direction tonight in regard to your draft budget. I know that's been a very challenging thing to get done in the current environment, and I really want to acknowledge your significant investment of time and consideration to getting that done. Likewise, Mayor, and thank you all for saying that too, but likewise the staff who've spent countless hours working on various possibilities and combinations for your consideration. I really want to thank all of the staff who've been involved for their dedication and their care in helping you to arrive at this draft budget, Mayor. So just a really big thank you to everybody. The one item I was going to pick out, Mayor, happy to answer questions as always, but the one item I was going to pick out was the launch of the active living census for our Shire. That's one that's happened across the entire Loddon Campaspe region. It was launched last week. In our case, and it was a product of the Healthy Heart of Victoria initiative, which is a product of the Regional Partnerships initiative, of which we are members. This active living census survey was completed by more than 2,300 residents from Mount Alexander Shire alone. And it's given us a lot of information, Mayor, about the state of the health and well-being of our community from both a mental and physical perspective. We learned a lot there. Pleasing to see that more than 4 out of 5 respondents said their health is good to excellent and that they have high levels of life satisfaction there. But there are challenges as well in our community, and we know those, but we got a lot more information about exactly what they might be. And a lot of thoughts from the community about what would make it easier for them to not only get more exercise, but also have better access to better food. So, which are two of the very important elements of being fit and well. So I wanted to mention that, Mayor, because it is now available, that document, on Council's website under the Healthy Heart area of the mountalexander.vic.gov.au website. Great document, not only for our own efforts to think about where are our next investments in programs and infrastructure, but also for community agencies, schools, sporting clubs and groups are all going to get a lot of value out of the information that's in there to make their own bids either to council or to other levels of government, Mayor, for future funding. So well done to everybody involved in that, and thank you very much to the more than 2,300 people who took the time to get involved in that, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodler. Much appreciated. Councillors, got any questions about any of the items in our CEO's report? No, I think we're probably getting a bit, the hour is late, and we can always raise them with you at a later time. Oh, Councillor Lesser, you have something to raise?
Yes, because it's a delegate's report.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, CEO. This is your delegate's report.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, CEO.
Yes,
Yes.
we need microphones now. Getting old. Okay, here's a delegate's report. A couple of weekends ago, when the COVID restrictions were lifted, I had to get out, and it was one of the things that got to me. And I got out into the street for quite a few hours and conducted a listening post. But what was interesting, I got questions from drive-in picture theatres to cat curfews, and it was really fascinating to engage with the community. And they were really happy for somebody to be out there and listening to them. And I got half a page full of different items, and it's worthwhile just mentioning a few of them because it just showed the depth of what the community. I had questions about subdivisions of Campbell's Creek, vegetation removal, on-site visits, tree planting. I even got shop closures in Malden and input into the hardcore planning scheme, cat curfews, tree roof barriers, affordable housing, mental health, and a whole lot of bits and pieces. And it was great to be out there and supporting our community. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other delegates' reports? No, thank you. All right, well, that finishes delegates' reports. There are no notices of motion, no urgent special business, don't be there. No confidential, oh, yes, we have a
Yes.
confidential
Yes,
report.
yes.
Because we have a confidential report, we need to close the meeting. And it's the last item, so we can say a big farewell to our viewers, those who are still with us. I'm sure there's better things on
I'll
TV.
put forward a motion here that we close the meeting to the public
Thank you.
As
Right,
per the
sorry.
recommendation.
as per the record.
Oh, as per the recommendation, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, councillor Gardner. Any opposition? No. All right, well, in that case, we will close the meeting to the public. Thank you. So we'll bid farewell to our live Zoom feed.